Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Arts Audiences Now. I'm Katie Rains, CEO of Indigo, so I'm delighted that you're joining us today to try and understand some of what's been going on with arts audiences in the last year. I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Kerry and Flo, who are going to take you through how we collect the data we'll be presenting, and then they'll talk you through the picture that we're seeing of audiences, how they're behaving and what they're thinking. Please do put any questions or comments in the chat as we go along, and we'll answer as many questions as we can later in the session. We also have closed captioning if you'd like to turn that on at the bottom of your screen, and we will be recording the session to make available to you later should you want it. So at Indigo, we believe that an audience-centric organisation is a more successful one. We're in the business of gathering the best possible audience insight and putting it into the hands of cultural organisations to help you make audience-centred decisions and ultimately be more successful and sustainable. But we do that in a different way, which is all based on collaboration. Rather than simply working with one organisation at a time to help them understand their own audiences, we've developed an approach that not only gives real-time data to an individual organisation, but also builds a collective data set that we can all benefit from, allowing us to share insight with the sector as we're doing today. So I'd like to thank you if you're one of the organisations that has contributed to this data set, and encourage you to join us if you're not. Before Flo takes us through that insight, I'm going to ask Kerry to talk a little bit more about Indigo Share and how we create our insight data sets. Thanks, Kerry.
Thank you, Katie. So, as Katie said, based on our belief in the power of collaborative insight, Indigo shares our collective approach to helping arts and cultural organisations understand their audiences. And it includes our hot topics like Act Green and Tomorrow's Audience, which hopefully many of you have come across, which explore the biggest questions of the moment and are offered free to cultural organisations thanks to generous sponsorship. Indigo Share Subscription is our collaborative post-visit survey, which builds a longer-term picture of audiences' experiences at arts organisations. And the aim is that cultural organisations can gather data about their own audiences that's essential for their decision-making, but in such a way that it's possible to build really useful benchmarks. These benchmarks benefit all organisations who are subscribers, but they also help us tell a story about the sector. And for some, that might mean a clearer case for support, and for others, a way to talk about policy in the context of audience behaviour. So we only gather data that actually tells organisations something useful about their audiences, and they can see it live as it comes throughout the year. By developing really easy to use surveys, we hope to make everybody's lives easier. We do all the thinking, consultation with the sector and arts organisations, survey design and setup, which means consistent questions and reliable data for each organisation about their own audiences. And the benchmark is, of course, key, enabling organisations to see how they're performing compared to the wider sector. And as we grow, so does the richness of that benchmark and the option to look at regional and art form benchmarks. So you're aware subscribers receive these full benchmark reports twice a year, and annually we produce an overall benchmark summary, which we share openly, and that's what you're doing here today. Some of you might have been part of the power of collective insight during COVID, when projects that we ran, such as After the Interval and Missing Audiences, created rapid insights based on hundreds of thousands of audience members, the biggest of their kind in the world. And Indigo Share Subscription builds on that collaborative legacy. So a quick run through of what Indigo Share Subscription actually includes before we get into the meat of the findings. So the heart of Indigo Share Subscription is our award-winning post-visit survey, which has been tried and tested over many years and is always co-created in consultation with the sector. We want it to be a nice experience for audiences as well as useful for organisations, so we try and keep it simple and clear. It's a post-visit survey, sent usually 1 to 7 days after attending, with many organisations automating this. Organisations often add their own bespoke questions, which is included as standard, although of course these are not benchmarked. And each survey gets branded with the organisation's logos and colours. We're also providing Arts Council England funded organisations with the files to upload to Illuminate completely free. So subscribers then have access to live data through a range of viewing options, including seeing their results by show, and monitoring their KPIs. And we have ready-made dashboards so that people can focus on their key metrics. And some of the ways that organisations have told us that they use this data day to day is sharing weekly with senior teams to track their key metrics and modify their strategies and tactics, reporting to funders on success, making cases for support, planning targeted marketing campaigns, including channel selection and messaging, and developing programming to reach untapped audiences. So the twice yearly benchmark reports compare individual organisations' results with those of all other organisations in Indigo share, so they can see how they're performing versus the sector. A couple of pages from our recent report here. And we also compare demographic data against the census so that it can be viewed in context. It's worth mentioning at this point that we've worked in arts organisations and we do know how hard it can be to find time to reflect on audience insight, which is why we really appreciate your time today, and then to use it to inform planning. So we also offer 2 one-to-ones as part of our share subscription. Here's Flo in action on one of those. And we've been doing these with our subscribers over the last few weeks, and it's been really insightful to dig into each organisation's audience responses and then thinking of ways to interpret and use the insight that's being generated. Hopefully you'll find ways yourself after seeing this benchmark report today. So now you're all familiar with how we collect this data, I'll hand over to Flo so she can take us through the headlines from this year's Indigo Share Subscription UK benchmark. Flo.
Thanks very much, Kerry. Hi, everyone. So as Kerry explained, the data that I'm sharing today has been collected through these post-visit surveys from our Indigo Share subscribers in 23-24. We've got a real range of organisations using the surveys, producing and receiving theatres, art centres, some in urban areas, including London, and others more rural. They range hugely in capacity and are based across the UK. Together in the last year, they generated 67,000 responses from audiences. We calculate the benchmark figures as an average of averages. So what I mean by that is that for each metric, we look at the average figure from each organisation and take an average across the organisations rather than an average across all responses. So basically, this means that larger organisations that typically might generate more responses are not able to skew the benchmark massively if they're doing something a bit different. We ask respondents a range of questions so that we know a bit more about them generally, as well as their experience specifically at the organisation. And that means we can compare responses across different types of audiences, which I'll be doing today. So we're going to be looking at the overall results, but also looking at the 18% who are first-time attenders to the organisation who sent them the survey, the 9% who say they attend any arts just once a year or less, so more infrequent attenders, and the 5% who are aged under 35. So we'll see how their responses compare. And where relevant, I've also made comparison with previous years of our surveys with data from 2022-23 and 2019-20, and also with census data. I'm going to share the results through our Indigo Total Insight model, which we've designed as a simple way of thinking about audiences through these 4 lenses. We think that a combination of understanding your audience profile, how they're behaving, their attitude to the organisation and the arts generally, and the impact of cultural attendance on them should give us a clear and well-rounded understanding of audiences. So first section is profile. Who were your audiences in 2023-24 and how representative are they of the UK population? The key point on profile really is that arts audiences are not representative of the general population. They skew older, with 65% age 55 or over, compared to 35% to 38% in the census data from England and Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. First-time attenders and those attending less frequently are a little bit younger, however, but only 5% of the overall respondents are under 35. They're also not representative in terms of ethnicity, in England and Wales at least. 95% of respondents identify as white or white British, compared to 82% in England and Wales census data. Despite this having been a real focus for organisations, we haven't seen much movement in this since 2019. Under 35s, though, are a little more ethnically diverse. and only 11% of audiences identify as disabled, compared to between 18% and 24% from the different census data in regions across the UK. So we're not managing to be fully representative of the population around us. Less than 10% of arts attenders in our data set have children under 16 living with them. This won't be a surprise given the age profile that I've just told you about, but it does mean a potential opportunity to reach more families with young children who we know make up almost half of the family households in the UK. Arts audiences are generally a little better off than the general population, with almost half saying that they have a salary higher than the UK average. However, 37% said their salary was lower than average, and a significant proportion are affected by the cost of living crisis. So 3/4 said their attendance at arts events was currently being influenced by financial pressures, with almost a fifth saying it was affected a lot. The second part of our total insight model looks at behaviour. How are audiences behaving in relation to your organisations and culture in general? Firstly, then, what are audiences looking for? We ask them how they would describe their artistic and cultural preferences in general, and the majority say, unsurprisingly, that they're looking for good entertainment. But a significant proportion are quite adventurous as well, and say they like seeing a variety of things and have eclectic tastes. This sense of adventure is particularly clear for under 35s, although an even higher proportion of them than the benchmark are in search of good entertainment. They're also more likely to enjoy trying out new things, and word of mouth from their peers is an important factor for them too. 16% higher than the benchmark is that 36% who say they tend to go to things recommended by others. When we asked them to think about what motivated them to attend for that particular visit that they're answering the survey about, unsurprisingly, audiences tend to say that seeing that particular production was the main motivation. However, a general love of theatre, along with the social reasons, spending time with friends and family, treat for a special occasion, are also really important motivators. Comparing the benchmark then with that under 35s group, we can see that under 35s are even more socially motivated, attending cultural organisations to spend time with friends and family and as a treat for a special occasion. However, the real difference that we spotted was in their love of theatre as a motivation for attendance. Considering that under 35s currently only make up 5% of responses, it's clear that those who are attending, doing something a bit different perhaps to many of their age group, have a real love for theatre. And perhaps these super engaged under 35s could be the key to bringing in more younger audiences. And finally, then on motivations, when comparing responses from people attending the venues for the first time with those who have been before, you can see that first-time attenders are more likely to have been motivated to visit as a treat for a special occasion. And that's really consistent with what we found in our recent Tomorrow's Audience research into first-timers since COVID, where special occasions are a real driver. Thinking about your existing or returning audiences, many organisations that we talk to seem to focus kind of solely on trying to sell the art to these existing audiences, so recommending shows which they might like based on what they've seen previously. This data, though, suggests that you should also remember to think about the broader needs of those returning audiences. So they're also looking for a social experience and something to satisfy their love of theatre. Continuing to think about first-timers, do remember that they come in all shapes and sizes. So we asked audiences whether they'd been to your organisation before that visit. These are the people in pink on the graph. We also ask, and this is what we're looking at here, how frequently they attend the arts generally, not just at that specific organisation. And you can see that while 10% of those who are new to your organisation are also completely new to the arts, almost a third are very frequent attenders who just happen not to have been to your organisation before. So this is really just a reminder that while the majority of your first-time attenders might immediately feel quite comfortable in a cultural venue, at least 20% of them, those who are new and infrequent arts attenders, will need and really, really value the particular care and attention that you give to people coming to your venue for the first time. We ask audiences how they found out about the particular event they came to, and they can select from a whole range of marketing channels. Emails from the organisation, the venue website and social media are the key channels, but we have seen some interesting shifts in responses to this question since 2019, and that's what I'm showing here. Email has increased from 21% to 37%, social from 6% to 26%, and posted brochures have dropped from 31% to 13%. We do know that many organisations have purposely reduced print for environmental and cost reasons and also improved their digital strategies, and we can definitely see that in the data. What we also see is that first timers are more likely to have been recommended by friends and family, as well as seeing a social media post or advert. And we know from tomorrow's audience that that social driver, as well as needing multiple different motivators to drive attendance, is really important for those first timers. Under 35s, interestingly, were more likely to see outdoor ads, 15% compared to 3% in the benchmark. And we think this is due to them being more likely to be using public transport, which we will come on to now. Thinking about audience travel generally, the results when looking back from 2019 onwards suggest audiences are not travelling as far as they used to get to cultural venues. The average distance travelled to your organisations has dropped from 26 miles in 2019 to 18 miles in 2023-24. Obviously, because of use of public transport, traffic in cities impacting journeys, we also ask how long the journey takes, and over half of audiences are getting to your venue within half an hour. This supports the general consensus that we've been hearing from across the sector that people are more locally focused since COVID. They're more aware and supportive of their local venues and more likely to be working part of the week from home. Under 35s, who are more environmentally conscious and less likely to have cars, are more likely to be using public transport and walking, seeing your outdoor advertising at the same time. And although many are staying local, 27% of audiences are still travelling for more than 45 minutes to get to your venues. So that is a significant investment of time, which shouldn't be forgotten about when thinking about their experience as a whole. The third part of the total audience model then is attitude. So what do audiences think of cultural venues and what kind of experience have they had with you? The good news is arts attenders are having an absolutely wonderful time at your venues. The benchmark Net Promoter Score, which asks audiences if they'd recommend your organisation and gives a score from -100 to +100, is really, really high at 71 across our benchmark. For context, in 2024, Apple's NPS is 61 and Amazon's is 49. Scores from both first-time attenders to your venue and returning audiences are really high, but returning audiences, despite often being the ones to complain about the toilets or the bar, are actually even more likely to be recommending you to friends and family. Audiences think your staff are absolutely great. The survey is filled with positive comments. This 4.6 out of 5 star rating shows that, and 90% say that they felt welcome and included when coming to your organisations. And perhaps even more fundamentally, they think your productions are great too. So when asked how many stars they'd give the show if reviewing it for the newspaper, on average, they give an amazing 4.6 stars. When asked to rate the value for money of different aspects of the experience, despite lots of discourse lately about high ticket prices across the sector, tickets ranked most highly on value for money. This is true actually across all segments, even first-timers for whom we know ticket price is a strong influencing factor. On the other hand, audiences rate drinks and food slightly lower for value for money. We think perhaps there's a question here of how you package up your food and drink offer to show audiences that they're getting something a bit different to a drink or snack they could pick up from Tesco on the way to you. We know from Act Green that audiences respond well to and are willing to pay a bit more for things like locally sourced products, something a bit different, which adds to the experience and makes it more difficult to do a direct price comparison. And lastly then from me, what impact is cultural attendance having on your audiences? And what impact do you have on the local economy more broadly and local community? Audiences say that they love sharing the experience with other people. They agree with the statement that they feel lively and enthusiastic and hardly notice the time passing. This, I think, is a really key message when considering how you compete with an evening at home in front of the telly, particularly at a time when there's this perception in the sector that changing audience behaviours are ruining the experience for others. This doesn't seem to come across in our results. Our audiences and first timers and under 35s, even more so, absolutely love being there with other people immersed in the experience. As an organisation, you're bringing audiences into the local area who are contributing to the local economy. More than a third are going somewhere locally for drinks and food, and 16% are spending time in the area shopping or visiting other attractions. Under 35s are even more likely to be doing this, which aligns with what I was saying earlier about them being motivated by the social experience. However, this does mean that they are less likely to be coming to you for pre-show food and drinks. This could possibly be a case of doing more to position your bar or restaurant as an appealing place for younger audiences to come to. Only half of your audiences think that you're doing enough to show a clear commitment to environmental sustainability, and that is 10% lower for young audiences at only 41%. But these high standards are in place because the audiences hold cultural organisations in such high regard. The overwhelming majority of audiences agree with the statement that the organisation who sent them the survey is important to our local community, which I think is an incredible stat showing just how much they value arts organisations in society and the wider cultural ecosystem. I'm going to hand back to Katie now to take us through her 5 key takeaways.
Thanks, Flo. So I'm just going to pull out 5 things that I think are interesting out of that, particularly interesting, and that could be opportunities for us, some of which are easier than others. So firstly, I think obviously we need to do more to make our audience profile better reflect that of our communities. We all know this, and we've known this for years, right? But since Indigo started collecting data in this way over 15 years ago, I've barely seen the dial shift on age or ethnicity. And this year's results don't make for easy reading either. Of course, if it was easy to do this, we'd have done it. So I'm not pretending that there's a silver bullet to do this. But perhaps a glimmer of hope. Our Tomorrow's Audience research and the data that we're seeing from this data set does show that new attenders are more likely to be younger and more ethnically diverse. So we need to understand and listen to these audiences and not let them be drowned out by the swathes of older, more established and probably more vocal audiences, many of whom sadly just want everything to stay the same. If you haven't yet read our Tomorrow's Audience report, I'd encourage you to, because hopefully you'll feel less overwhelmed by this challenge that faces us all and can instead focus on the things that you are able to do right now. Secondly, families are really underrepresented in this data set, but we know from our research during COVID that they were the first to reattend and are keen to seek out opportunities to widen their children's horizons. We also know from Tomorrow's Audience that taking your child to something cultural is often the motivation to attend yourself for the first time. But families are time poor and have a lot of practical things to sort out in order to be able to come. So we need to A, wave our family opportunities in front of them with a very big flag. So if you haven't already developed family-specific communications, please do it now. And B, really make your value for money proposition very strong, including anything that you do around refunds or exchanges or ticket protection, because this group will be the most reluctant to commit without a get out if something changes. Thirdly, focus on your local area. So not only can we see that audiences are travelling less far than they were pre-COVID for all the reasons Flo mentioned, 91% of people say you are an important part of the local community. How visible are you in your local community? With more and more marketing now going online and digital, there's a danger that the old school plastering of posters and banners in the local area just isn't there anymore. What opportunities are there for your stuff to be everywhere, out and about in your hyper-local area? Have you door dropped a postcard announcing the new season with a QR code into all the key postcodes locally? Also, with over half of under 35s eating somewhere locally as part of their visit, your organisation is benefiting local businesses hugely. Use these stats, get boots on the ground and find the local businesses that can be advocates for you and maybe providing some of that visibility that you need. Fourthly, use your overall customer feedback in your marketing. NPS, better than Apple. Come on, guys, this is brilliant. Overall star rating for staff, customer comments and quotes, obviously anonymised. Use them in your marketing. Keep them generic. So I know as a sector, we use lots of quotes and reviews about particular shows, but I've seen it less widely used about generally venues and organisations, and I do think there's a place for it. We know that we're the most trusted source. We know that the most trusted source for most people is someone like them. So seeing peer reviews and ratings is likely to have a bigger impact on them, even sometimes than a 4-star review for a show that they're not really that interested in. Thinking back to families, for example, if you're on Indigo Share subscription, we could help you to pull out the overall star rating from family respondents, and you could use that in your family communications, showing families that A, you're interested in them, and that B, other families really rate you. And then finally, talk more about sustainability. Only half the respondents and even fewer under 35s think that you're showing commitment to sustainability. If you've been part of our Act Green surveys for the past 2 years, this will not be news to you. And if you'd like to join Act Green 3, there's just about time to get on board for this year. We've learned an awful lot from that can help you in the challenge of communicating sustainability appropriately and effectively. Audiences want to see the cultural sector leading on this issue. And on the basis of these figures, we've still got quite a long way to go. So we're going to take some questions in a moment. Do put them in the chat if you have any. But before we do, here's a quick summary of how you can join Indigo Share subscription to be part of the next benchmark. These are the different share subscription plans and prices that we have, and the full details of what's included is available on our website. If you're an Arts Council England funded organisation, as Kerry said, we can provide uploads to Illuminate within your subscription price. So if you want a demo of how it works or just want to chat to us about how Indigo Share could help you, then get in touch, drop us an email as shown there, or book a call through our calendar links, which are all on our website. Getting up and running is very smooth. We aim to have organisations set up within a week, unless there's lots of complicated bespoke questions, but that's fine. We can get those done. Might take a little longer, but if you do have a deadline, let us know and we can usually accommodate that. So the best way to get set up is to send us an email or get a call booked in so that we can go through everything and act quickly. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks to my team, to Flo and to Kerry, and also to Anastasia and Ellie in the background who work behind the scenes to make sure that the surveys run successfully. When the webinar ends, a short survey will pop up. And we'd really appreciate your feedback so that we can make these sessions as useful as possible for you. So please do let us know how we can do that. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you all soon.